Okay, we're back. We're live. It's been a month since we talked to Gauri Kandekar, our correspondent in Brussels. We call this show Midnight in Brussels, even though it's probably 11 o'clock, depending on the time change. And it's midnight?
Yes.
Oh, you stayed up late. Thank you, Gauri.
My
That's Gauri
pleasure.
Kandekar. She runs a Global Relations Forum, gr-forum.com. .com, was it?
What?
.org.
ORG.
Yes, which is an important think tank that she runs in Brussels, and it has a lot to do with India, and she has a lot to do with both the EU and India. So we're very, very, very interested in talking with her all the time and taking the pulse, the temperature of what's going on in Europe. And in the past, we have touched on the subject of Brexit. I guess when it first came up, she taught us about Brexit. And now, what happened? What happened, Gauri?
Yes. Well, the unthinkable happened. The UK voted to go out. Well, they had a referendum and they don't want to stay in the EU, which has been a nightmare for Europe and global markets. Of course, the UK economy. But yes, the unspeakable happened, Jay.
Yeah, do you know why? Do you have any thoughts about why? Everybody's, kind of trying to analyze now why.
Oh, yes, the huge question. So, one of the things is that, well, the UK has always not really been happy about its membership with the EU, yes? I mean, most EU member states have always had this tension about sovereignty and how much they're being dictated to or not. But in reality, all of these member states have made those decisions. Their diplomats have sat and written and debated on all these words that go into each and every law or whatever that's been, handed down to the populations. And now, so UK has, of course, had this special relationship where they don't sign up to all EU laws, EU initiatives. They've had these opt-outs, and it's been the only special case where they've had opt-outs on, for example, the Euro, the Schengen area, and they've not been really pro-integration. Now, what happened was, so David Cameron, when during the last elections, he promised for electoral gains, yes? I mean, he promised to have a referendum in 2016 on EU membership, which was unthinkable itself. But at that time, he was overconfident and he saw that as a win-win-win to keep Scotland in, the finish for once and for all Britain's unease with the EU, and move on to, a stronger kind of a government. But the campaign, so there've been this hugely Eurosceptic party called UKIP, UK Independence Party, which has campaigned which has run a campaign of lies, basically, and we'll come to the issues later, which were discussed. But most of the people have believed those lies. And shockingly, without taking into consideration the impact of leaving the EU on the economy, most people just voted to go out because, I mean, for three reasons, yes? I mean, the first one is because they didn't want to be dictated to by the EU. The second is they wanted to take back their country, like, Donald Trump has been advertising in the US, unfortunately. And the third reason is, surprisingly, unsurprisingly, many people didn't know what they're voting for. Many people didn't think their vote would count, and they didn't even know what the EU was. So after the vote, after the referendum, you had a spike in people Googling what the EU is. So
Really, I heard that. That was really, it's a little late to ask that question after you've all voted.
yes. So everybody in the rest of Europe is shocked that this happened and how it happened and why it happened.
Well, let's talk about the arguments that were made. I recall reading that this was focused by the opponents to continued association with the EU as a question of immigration. They didn't like all these immigrants coming. And how persuasive was that argument, and was it correct?
Completely false argument, completely false. So the Leave side, so there were two camps, yes, the Remain camps, which wanted to remain in the EU, and the Leave camp, which wanted Brexit, basically. And to be honest, immigration was the main issue that broke the camel's back in a way. It was, even if they don't accept it, it was the main issue which triggered this Brexit vote. What the Leave camp promised to the people is that the UK would have control over immigration. The UK would be able to choose who comes in and who goes out. There would be no more of these European people from, East Central and Eastern Europe, the Poles or, the Romanians, Bulgarians. And they would have a points-based system like in Australia, which determined who came to the UK. But at the same time, they also wanted to stay in the EU single market. Yes, I mean, it's a space where they don't have these restrictions, a free trade area, basically, a really more advanced free trade area. We have freedom of movement of goods, labor, services. So it's really advanced free trade area. But they wanted that, but with the single market comes free movement, and they can't control it. So the politicians, this Leave camp, what they advertised was that we will stay in the single market, but we will have control over immigration, and that's completely false. There's utter rubbish, and now that the truth is coming out, and those same politicians are backtracking, people are asking, well, those were all lies. We're never going to have control over immigration. And the single market is something the UK can not give up. It won't give up because more than 50% of its trade is done with the EU. And it wants that.
Well, another argument, which I think is embedded in what you said, that I understand, is that we don't want the EU telling us what to do. They're unreasonable, they're arrogant, and every time we have an engagement with them, we are turned off by them, and we don't want any more of that. We want to be independent like the good old days. How valid is that argument?
It's completely false again. I mean, if only, analysts like me had gone out and spoken to the public, or even the mainstream politicians, just go through one of these issues one by one. That argument about taking their country back, EU not deciding for them, again, it's completely false. For one, because you have or had probably all British diplomats sitting around the table negotiating each and every law, directive, suggestion that came out of the EU. It was not like it was imposed. Now, over the past decades, what's come out of the EU is that unpopular decisions, which are made in the interests of the people, are blamed on Brussels. Yes? Mm-hmm. Politicians agree to them. Nothing happens in the EU without agreeing to it by all its member states. Until now, most of the decisions were based on consensus. Now they're on different levels of majority, basically, depending on the issue. But until now, everybody decided unpopular decisions were blamed on the EU. The popular ones were touted as an achievement by national politicians, yes? So this has grown over a certain period of time. And the perception in most member states or more across the channel in the UK has been that Brussels is imposing its decisions on us. And issues as silly as high-powered vacuum cleaners. Or the shapes of bananas. I mean, why would you want wonky bananas anyways, yes? So well, it's been blamed on the EU completely.
It's really sad what happened, and it sounds, I didn't realize that the vote did not have to be taken. I always wondered about that, Cameron didn't have to call for this vote. And, it was a huge, as you said, a huge miscalculation. And then the people who voted, they had a huge miscalculation too. I doubt the man in the street knew that the stock market was going to plunge, that it was going to affect their quality of life, their economy for years to come, and realized that it isolated Britain. Terrible result, a whole series of tragic mistakes. And one of the interesting things about it is the people in the US weren't following this. They didn't know about it. They didn't figure this vote was going to have any direct effect on them. I think nobody realized the huge impact. So now the stock market goes down for 2 huge days in a row, almost 1,000 points collectively and this is worse than 2008. And I guess the question I put to you, Gauri, You know, we have not yet seen all the implications. We haven't seen the implications economically, or for that matter, politically. You know that Russia is going to take advantage of this. You know that the EU is going to become more fragmented. What do you see as the most troublesome implications of what happened? Gauri, can you hear me? We've got to recall you. We'll take a short break. We'll recall you because we're not getting your sound. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Patrick Bratton, host of Global Connections here on ThinkTech Hawaii. I'm also a professor of political science at Hawaii Pacific University. So this show is one of the ways that we collaborate between ThinkTech Hawaii and Hawaii Pacific University, where I talk on my show with a lot of guests about issues dealing with Hawaii, the United States, and the world. So I look forward to seeing and interacting with you online and on my show. Thank you very much.
Aloha, my name is Danelia, Danelia.
And I'm the other half of the duo, John Newman. Welcome.
We are co-hosts of a show called Keys to Success, which is live on the ThinkTech Live Network series, weekly on Thursdays at 11 a.m.
We're looking forward to seeing you then.
Aloha!
Aloha, my name is John Waihe'e, and I used to be a part of all the things that you might be angry at. I served in government here and may have made decisions that affects you. So I want to invite you in. I want to invite you in to Talk Story with me and some very special guests every other Monday here at Talk Story with John Waihe'e. Come on in, join us, express your opinion, learn more about your state, and then do something about it. Aloha.
Aloha, I'm Kaui Lucas, host of Hawaii is My Mainland, here on ThinkTech Hawaii every Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. Start your Pauhana weekend off with the show where I talk to people about issues pertinent to Hawaii. You can see my previous shows at my blog, kauilucas.com, and also on ThinkTech's.
Aloha, my name is Kirsten Baumgart-Turner, and I'm the host of Sustainable Hawaii at thinktechhawaii.com. We air live on the internet and also on Oceanic Channel 16. I'd invite you to come for a fresh new show every Tuesday from 12 to 1 o'clock. I try to bring on guests that give us a different viewpoint on aspects of sustainability in Hawaii, as well as trying to unpack some of the difficult concepts of measuring and achieving sustainability, particularly with regard to sustainable economic growth and prosperity in Hawaii. Please join us every Tuesday from 12 to 1 p.m. Mahalo, aloha.
We're back with Gauri Kandakar, Midnight in Brussels, talking about Brexit in Brussels. So tell us about the implications as you see them from Brussels.
Yes. Well, the first thing is just 3 days after Brexit, the UK has no leader, no opposition, no economy, and its union is in trouble, yes? I mean, the UK is made up of course, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Northern Ireland, Wales, and of course, Gibraltar. Scotland voted to stay inside the EU overwhelmingly, and that's one of the main considerations for Scotland is its membership to the EU. So now what's happening in the UK is that Scotland is opposing the Brexit referendum. I mean, the referendum itself is not binding. The government will have to trigger Article 50, which is an article in the treaty which would formally start the withdrawal processes. So for the UK, it's that the economy is in shambles. Basically, most credit rating agencies just removed the UK's AAA ratings to negative in a way, which and the pound is in free fall. It's the dollar is really powerful against the pound, and it's almost equaling the EU's euro, which is troubling. Geopolitically, I am of the opinion that Brexit might even make the EU stronger, and this is why, because the UK has always represented the BRICS in this European Union. And with the breaks gone, you only have acceleration, yes? I mean, all these countries have always wanted to integrate further. They have the Schengen area, they will go to the Euro, and they want to integrate and make a stronger bloc. I think that's something that could happen under the French-German leadership. Third countries like Russia and China, of course, going to want to take advantage, of course, going to want to make cracks in this fragile union, fragile really, because there are many parties across different member states, far-right parties, who are asking for such referendums. But I think it would be a stronger union anyways. The will to integrate is much stronger on the continent than with the UK.
What will that depend on, Gauri? I mean, will it depend on leadership? I mean, is it a natural process that you would expect in any event, a stronger EU, or will it depend on something?
No, it's just a kind of a domino effect that's been going on for the past 50 years, you know. They've started integrating economically, and then it's gone on politically, and now these countries are so intertwined, so politically and economically intertwined, that there's no other way to go except forward. But this is creating a kind of a rethink in the union. They recognize that reforms are necessary. Maybe they've given more sovereignty to Brussels prematurely, and this is going too fast. So what the Brexit would spawn would be a reform and rethink, which would ultimately, I believe, lead to a stronger union. But I mean, if you come here to Brussels and then you travel around different EU countries, you see a difference completely with what you see in the UK and here. I mean, UK has always had this strong identity. It's been a global player. It has the Commonwealth, and so it thought that, you know, it would basically be able to live off the back of that global activeness. But it does need the EU.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, the big loser in this is UK.
Definitely.
And it seems clear that whatever happens, UK is going to be, behind the curve on it. Now, what about the U.S.? You have any thoughts about what's going to happen here? I mean, we're dependent on Britain in many ways. We're also dependent on the EU. So where our fortunes lie now with the separation?
Well, now with the UK having gone out of the EU, the natural leader or the partner that the US has in the EU would be Germany. And already John Kerry is traveling to the EU to meet various leaders, especially Angela Merkel. And that's going to become a kind of a split, yes? I mean, the US is always going to maintain a special relationship, not so special anymore with the UK. But now it's going to put more political investment into its relationship with Germany, because Germany is at the moment the natural leader in the EU. So that is going to be one impact. The second impact is hopefully people realize what a big mistake Brexit was, and that you should not buy into the rhetoric of, ill-informed leaders trying to sell you a product which doesn't exist. So maybe this can sway some Trump sympathizers.
Yeah, is there a possibility that the EU will come back and that the Brexit will be reversed? I guess David Cameron resigned immediately, and maybe that was right. But somebody's got to come back and say, wait a minute, if Cameron can take a vote, I want to take a vote too. I want you guys to reconsider, motion to reconsider. Can that happen?
Well, there's been a petition. Under UK law, any petition sent to the parliament which receives more than 100,000 signatures has to be discussed by the parliament. Now, that petition has been signed by more than 3 million people, and they want the referendum to be retaken, because if you see who's voted for what, you have over 50 years old who voted to exit, and they're not going to live with the consequences of that much longer than the younger generations who overwhelmingly supported to remain. Scotland has wanted to remain, and so they were debating today in Westminster about a re-referendum. Apparently, they're saying it won't happen, but I mean, it's going to come at the cost of the United Kingdom's own union itself. Yes, Scotland might want to go into the EU. The Scottish party has been asking for a re-referendum of their independence referendum that happened a year ago. And it's going to just create utter chaos. But Article 50, so this formal procedure to withdraw from the union is not launched already. So they are kind of taking measured decisions. I think it would be extremely sensible for the politicians, which do legally have a vote. They could have a vote on this question of EU membership. If they do that, the result would be the vast majority of members of parliament which would support to remain in the EU.
Yeah.
That could happen.
Yeah.
That would be political suicide, but it could.
Yeah, but this is all kind of the subject of an article that appeared, an op-ed piece that appeared in the New York Times Sunday edition News and Review, the weekly review, by Tony Blair, who came from the sidelines to write this really interesting op-ed piece. And to boil it all down, he says, watch out. We live in a world where the right goes further right. It's become more extremist, and the left goes further left. It becomes more extremist, and the middle softens, and everybody is going to the right or the left, and so moderates don't have a place there, and decisions are taken on the basis of irrational decision process, and that's what happened in Britain. And he says if Britain is to survive, Britain has to get back to the middle. That's the essence of his article, with good and valid reference to what's happening in the United States. That's what's happening in the United States too. We're going to the extreme right or the extreme left, and we can't get together on things, and we're not respecting the social compact, if you will. Thoughts about that? Is the world changing? Is he right that this is a global phenomenon?
As much as I don't like Tony Blair too much, I think he's completely right. There's a growth of nationalism globally, the rise in nationalism across the world, and you can see that also in the rise of, you can correlate it to the rise of crisis around the world. You can see rise of nationalism in China, Japan, even in Asia, of course, a lot in the West. But it's the process of people oversimplifying things and linking problems to politics and political issues, thinking that extreme opinions would provide a solution, which they won't, yes? The issue is that I think political correctness has a part to play in it as well, because mainstream parties have not addressed concerns as much as they would. So, these extreme parties on the left or right are the ones who are voicing their opinions, who are providing the platform. So they're heard. And I think media has a role to play in it as well. How much coverage they give to these voices, these fringe voices, and make them mainstream, I think that has a role to play in it as well.
Yeah, it's a wake-up call, isn't it? It's a wake-up call about political process everywhere. We didn't realize how the media have affected the, this dichotomy of left and right and extremism. We didn't realize how social media, extends that by logarithmic multiples. We didn't realize how people can take completely irrational positions and they can be the law. What are we going to do about this? Aren't you feeling threatened?
Yes, people in the UK already have been reporting instances of extremism, yes? Intolerance, be it towards the Poles or the Muslims after Brexit, right after Brexit. So it's a worrying trend. There's nothing, if somebody had a solution, it would have already been implemented, right? But it's just a matter of better law enforcement and really mainstream leaders coming out and saying that this is wrong. And I don't see many leaders come out. First of all, I think we have a lack of good leadership. So there are no good leaders now, as we had before. In the good old days, if I may say so, but Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, and all these leaders, they were actual leaders. But you don't have that now. You don't have people fighting for right. Nobody knows what is right anymore. So unless you have that good leader which says this is right and this is wrong, as simple as that may sound, you're just going to have everybody thinking that they're right on by themselves.
Well, I was going to ask you at the end, Gauri, what's the bright side, if there is a bright side? And I think you told me that. You told me the bright side is that Europe could find strength, that Europe may have, what it takes to survive this and to do it handily and to follow some of the loftier, loftier statements that it engaged in earlier, the loftier goals that it wanted to achieve. And so maybe we're in for a good time in Europe. Clearly, the loser is Britain, and I think to the extent that the U.S. is, polarized in the same way, then the U.S. is at risk. Any further comments? Any last comments before we go? We'll come back in a month and talk to you more, but it's hot now. What do you think?
Yeah, I just hope better sense prevails. I really, really hope that the UK would make better decisions and decide to stay, even if it comes at the cost of political future of some leader or some party. So fingers crossed that they do decide after all to stay in the EU. It's a good place. It's not that bad. And, they're going to get imposed decisions now if they leave. So better stay here and make them themselves.
Thank you, Gauri. Gauri
Thank you so
Kandekar,
much.
Midnight in Brussels, helping us understand, and it's not easy, understand what happened in Brexit and what it means for them and for us. Thank you so much, Gauri.
Thank you so much, Jay. Thank you.
Aloha.